Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching Perspective with your host Kriti Mishra. Latest State Bank of India report says that India's unemployment rate is at a record low, with the labour market altering substantially with self-employment. India's labour market is undergoing a deep structural transformation with self-entrepreneurship across all sectors. Government emphasis on entrepreneurship through Pradhan Mantri MUDRA Yojana and even recent schemes post-pandemic like PMSVANidhi for those at the bottom of pyramid is imparting a structural transformation in labour markets in India through formalisation of credit. And for deeper insights on this very imperative report, I'm joined by an illustrious panel of guests. Joining us through virtual platform, Mr. Priyadarshi, Associate Professor, RIS. Also joining us, Professor Charan Singh, CEO, EGROW Foundation. I welcome both of you to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us. And Professor Charan Singh, let me begin the program with you. There is a plethora of misplaced and ignorant data, interpretations in the public domain, some political, some economic, and some laced with old-fashioned rhetoric. The SBI report refutes many of the mundane and stereotyped rhetoric of interpretation of India's unemployment data. So, your opening thoughts on the latest SBI report.
So thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and also thank you very much for conducting this important discussion today. There's a matter of fact that there is a big confusion on the unemployment rate. There have been two major sources of data. One is the labor force participation rate, which we are getting from PLF. The other is coming from the other report. Now, both of them give a very different picture. In view of this, the problem that is coming out is what is the right story? Now, the report which is coming from the SBI gives or makes an attempt to clarify that the PLFS data is far more scientific. The sample size is very well designed. It covers 45,000 households in the urban areas and 55,000 households in the rural areas. To be precise, 45,811 in urban and 55,844 in the rural. And when you translate it to the number of persons being interviewed for this sample survey, 90,700 in the rural and 90,309 in the urban persons. Now, this is designed in a very scientific manner, though it has started from 2017-18. That means it doesn't have a long database. Also, there is some discontinuity because the methodology changes from the earlier EUS and SSO data. Now, there is a structural break there. But even if you look from 2017-18 to 22-23, the latest, this shows, compared to the CMI database, this shows a far robust growth of employment in the country. Now, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, substantial difference is emerging because the structural changes happening in the Indian economy. The Prime Minister's MUDRA Yojana and the SBI Yojana, these are giving lots of resources to individuals. Loans are being provided. Self-employment is being encouraged. As you know that in our country in the last 10 years, lots of emphasis has been placed on self-employment. So that is showing up in the labor force participation rate now. Even going by that logic, the SBI report very beautifully clarifies and speaks about the labor force participation and the unemployment rate. It clearly shows, according to the PLFS data, that the unemployment is down from 6.1% in 18, financial year 2018, to 3.2% latest data, according to the PLS survey. It also shows that the labor force participation is higher now, from 36.9% to 42.4%. Similarly, for the female labor force participation, it shows significant increase from 16 and this is a crucial area which has been criticized many times. That's what is happening to the female labor force participation rate in our country. Is it really around 16% and the lowest amongst major countries? Or is it higher? So PLFS data, based on this scientific survey, 4 times a year, quarterly, it is showing that the female labor force participation rate is increased from 16% to over 24.5%. So, to that extent, the Indian story is emerging. And if you look at the anecdotal, and during the course of the interview, I'll share some of it, the PLFS data looks far more robust and scientific to show that the unemployment rate in the country is low, labor force participation is high, and female labor force participation is high. I think it's a good report.
Well, absolutely, sir. It's a good report, and it is heartening to know that India's unemployment rate is also at a record low. Your thoughts, Professor Charan?
So yes, I would say it is at a record low because you know that we had the COVID problems and we had those challenges. So if you look at the both the labor force participation rate and look at the unemployment rate and look at the female labor force, I think it's very low. I must mention one thing here. When we say that the unemployment rate as now measured, which has come down from 6.1% in FY 2018 to 3.2% in FY 23, must mention there is something called the natural rate of unemployment. In advanced countries, it ranges between 4 to 5%. But in our country, now given this unemployment rate of 3.2%, I thought is very, very good rate unemployment. And that is as low as it can be because there has to be a certain natural rate of unemployment. And given by the global standards, this is amongst the lowest.
Well, absolutely. And we are the rising star as far as the global economy is concerned. That's very true, sir. But moving on to Mr. Dash. Mr. Dash, a very important point that Professor Charan Singh mentioned about female participation. Now, the labor force participation rate among females from 15 to 29 years of age has increased across the major states. Women's increasing economic participation also entails rising household saving rates, increasing consumption, and diversity in spending. How do you see the impact of female labor force on the economic growth of India, especially when India is on the cusp of becoming third largest economy in the world?
I think you mentioned it very rightly. The transformation that you see, which is precisely women-led, and during Indian presidency of G20, India has made that a priority. You see in all different spectrums of our economy and society, women are leading. And if you see the Mudra scheme dispersals or the 1.4 crore SHGs, 88% of them are women-led SHGs. And the I don't have the number now with me, but if you check the participation of women in STEM education, like science, technology, mathematics, and engineering, has increased significantly. All major competitive examinations that you see, the results, the women are at the top. So that sends a clear signal that the women are now getting time to get a proper education, get productively employed. In fact, in the SBI report, they said that perhaps the amenities have increased at home. That's why the women have time to go for more productive engagement over that time. And there's a very healthy trend emerging among women entrepreneurs. So the future, as you rightly mentioned, would belong to the women-led process of socio-economic transformation in the country. And the present government, in various ways, has made efforts to bring women to the mainstream, not just as the recipient end, but to lead and sort of demonstrate that they are no way inferior in the way the sort of demystifying the position that we have been maintaining in terms of the inferior sex. But to add to what Professor Singh mentioned, we have more than 50% of the self-employed force. The self-employment has increased. And the report says the average monthly earning of casual workers has increased by more than 1.3 times. Yeah. So if you go to the female participation, that is even more visible. So to conclude your first question, that it is going to be women-led, that is certainly going to happen, and we must not lose that momentum what we are observing today.
So you made very valid points there. Just wanted a clarification on you said that amenities have increased. That's why women have more time to go and be self-employed. You're talking about Ujjwala, perhaps. You're talking about Har Ghar, Nal Se Jal, and other amenities like that.
Mean that I also mean the empowerment of women in terms of digital public goods. Like they are much more empowered in terms of access to information. So there was a time when Professor Singh would correct me. We used to call that we are not only poor in terms of income, but there was information poverty as well. There is a sizable population, mainly in the rural areas. They didn't have any information about what is happening around.
Yes.
So now they have information through smartphones, through various apps. So that empowerment of women happening through digitalization, that is one force. And of course, the smoke-free kitchen and all these various things are sort of instill confidence among them that we could lead a much better life.
Well, absolutely. That's a very important point. But also talking about the broader picture and specifically talking about Northeast, Professor Charan Singh, look at the data that we have. Meghalaya at 45%, we're talking about women participation in workforce. Sikkim and Nagaland at 44%. States in the Northeast have performed much better on this metric. What is piloting this transformation, sir?
So I must mention, just want to continue from where Professor Das left. I want to add a point there that, look, as far as women are concerned, partly what you said with Har Ghar Jal and then toilet facilities being done in the house, provided in the house under the Prime Minister's schemes, women have far more better time management now in terms of better time availability at their end. Now, where will it reflect? It will reflect in a couple of things. One is better education, and therefore, I would expect, and if you are able to educate the women, you educate the family. And therefore, I expect a long-term implication of this initiative of the Prime Minister of having a toilet at home and providing water. And then, of course, you said the cooking gas and all that, which facilitates the health of the women. The other issue is, if you look at the Prime Minister's Mudra Yojana as well as the SBI Yojana, what has happened? The center has been the women. Even when you talk about the headload workers and street vendors, again, the focus has been women. Now, nearly 72 lakh loans have been given worth to 55 lakh street vendors. Now, and this is in addition to the Mudra Yojana. Now, that's why I'm saying that all these schemes that we have launched in the last few years certainly is changing the contours of employment, the definition of employment. And therefore, self-employment is obviously on the increase. Therefore, if you're looking for employment opportunities the way it used to be defined earlier, that has to be redone and rethought. And the education levels, number of years in education, and the employment opportunities, these have to be rethought. Secondly, if you look at the employment opportunities again, please remember earlier construction used to be highly labor intensive, and you would find many women employed in the construction activities. That is changing now. It's becoming high skilled, multi-rise buildings, high skilled, and that is bringing in skills and education into the system. So I think the time has come for rethinking about it. The issue that you raised about labor force participation and of course it being very high in Northeast, there's no doubt about it. The data which has been brought up does show that labor force participation in Meghalaya, Sikkim and Nagaland is really very high, much higher than the trend we would expect. It's about 45% in Meghalaya, 44 in Nagaland, Sikkim and Nagaland. And I think that's very, very positive trend that we are seeing.
Well, absolutely, sir. That's a very, very positive trend. You mentioned specifically about PM Mudra Yojana and also SBI Yojana. Mr. Dash, do you think that these programs have emerged as effective power tools for women empowerment in our country? And of course, we're not talking only about women empowerment, we're talking about women-led development in the country.
I think you're absolutely right. I agree with you. It has. I build on what I left last time. See, the women forget about the rural women. There was a time when the rural entrepreneurs were also not forthcoming to take any risks. I recall I was in a seminar in Guwahati a few years back. A very successful woman entrepreneur was sharing the story that how it was difficult to convince the banks that the project that she is going to uh, lead is viable, because the faith in the woman entrepreneurship as such was, I mean, not that great. And this Swanidhi and this SSG bank linkage program, all these are small efforts in a way to support the women enterprises. The SSG are doing fishing, they are doing paper making. So these are not capital intensive projects. They are labor intensive job creating occupations, but for that also there was hardly any ecosystem which could provide them that confidence. Now with maturing of the SSG bank linkage program for more than 2 decades through NABARD and other our nationalized banks, and these schemes like Mudra Sonidhi program, as Professor Singh mentioned, 72 lakh loans have been dispersed. And the dispersal, in fact, there is another number which you would find interesting. The average ticket size of the loans has increased from 38,000 to 72,000 in 2023. So that means the financial institutions are forthcoming, and this you see as a change in the ecosystem for promoting entrepreneurship. You can't attribute one particular the success to one particular scheme. It's just a net impact of the measures taken at all different levels. Even the banks and other financial institutions are also learning that how within the priority sector lending, how within different other formats of lending, they could reach out to the poor and support in terms of income generating activities. So you are right that this type of schemes like Swanidhi, PM Mudra, these should continue in some form. In fact, it should be more made more targeted, more incentivized in a way that the women, those who are with a little bit of higher education, would opt for creating jobs than seeking jobs.
Let me take that to Professor Charan Singh. Professor Charan Singh, as Mr. Dash mentions that there's complete change in the entire ecosystem, but do you think perhaps the most important component is the access to credit, particularly for women, that is actually piloting this transformation?
Absolutely, totally agree with you. Well, because if you look at the statements which have been made by the finance minister, she has repeatedly said under Mudra, 68% of the loans are being given to women entrepreneurs. So access to credit to the females has certainly been on the rise. Also, please remember, in India, also across the world, it has been established through research, females are far more financially accountable than men. Therefore, the NABARD introduced self-help groups from 1985 have focused on women, and the MFIs, the microfinance institutions, they focus on women. And therefore, if you look at that's exactly what I'm trying to say, that in the country, the samples and the hypothesis on the unemployment has to be revisited because so much has changed. And even if you look at the data, which I would like to share with you, and the SBI report has it, that if you look at the disbursement of money under PMMY Mudra loans, the amount has increased from 22,000 to nearly 49,000 over this last 6 years. So the accessibility to credit and easy availability is certainly making a difference. Also, one more point I would like to make in this context, in addition to what I've said, the business correspondent model of the commercial
Yes.
bank has made a very big difference. Despite the cultural challenges which the financial institutions had in reaching the women, though we tried to break through with the self-help groups and microfinance institutions, the business correspondents directly took the banking facilities to the women in households. This has really made a substantial change in the entrepreneurship in the country. And that's why I said the hike in the female labor force participation by 8 percentage points from 16 to 24 in just a period of 6 years is substantial. And I think in the days to come, with the amount of money that has gone into the women entrepreneurship and female labor force participation rising, you will find a multifold increase in the next few years. I don't think it's going to be linear. Rather, it's going to be a very, very sharp increase.
Absolutely. Hold your thoughts there, sir. Also, the fact that the report also talks about other schemes like Pradhan Mantri Yojana. It also talks about Aayushman Bharat. Of course, we've been talking about PMSVANidhi and also MUDRA Yojana. These schemes focus on those at bottom of the pyramid. It is imparting a structural transformation in labour markets in India through a formalisation of credit. It entails an outcome-based approach to assess real development on the ground. Do you think, sir, that finally we are delivering benefits to the last man or woman in the queue through good governance and true bottom-up approach instead of trickle-down approach?
I must mention this thing. Very good you raised this point. I must mention this upfront. Many things are happening which we in the country are not celebrating. The Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, rural and urban, is a scheme which has yet not been quantified and its implications understood. Let me give you a tip of the iceberg here. A single house that is constructed, apart from the fact that you mentioned that we are reaching the last mile, we are benefiting the last person on the street, apart from that benefit, and of course creating all-weather house for this person so that the weather, the climate does not impact this person, provides security and safety, and obviously through that you provide better labor force participation. Somebody is healthy, not coming to rain or winter or summer, and all. Apart from all that, let me share something which is as an economist I feel fascinating. Would you recognize the fact that a single house that is built in an urban area, and Pradhan Mantri's urban and rural housing schemes are the largest schemes in the world.
Absolutely,
largest
sir.
in the world, right?
Right.
What do they do? Do you know that each single house has backward linkages with 275 industries? 275 industries. This is one single economic unit which has such impact on the whole economy. No other
Absolutely.
economic unit has so much impact. So therefore, I say that the quantification of these recent schemes have yet not been properly evaluated. What implications it has on the economy, leave aside the implication of growth, healthy labor force, leave aside even the multiplier effect it has on on the economy.
Right, sir.
By just supporting 275 industries, the implications for the whole economy are substantive.
Well, absolutely, sir. India is emerging as a nation of job givers and not job seekers. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Professor Charan Singh and Mr. Priyadarshi Dash. Well, viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.